Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be reviewing A Divine Language, Learning Algebra, Geometry, and Calculus at the Edge of Old Age by Alec Wilkinson. So this is the book cover, just kind of looks like a head with some sort of geometrical shape on it, and it's about 200 pages, maybe a little over like 240 pages. And this, as the cover or the title indicates, is the journey of Alec Wilkinson, who is someone who did not excel in mathematics in school. He openly admitted that he cheated through his algebra classes and decided to bail at that point. But as he gets older into middle age, he realizes that he wants to really understand how math works. So he endeavors to give himself a year to teach himself algebra, geometry, and calculus. So that's the title, A Divine Language, Learning Algebra, Geometry, and Calculus at the Edge of Old Age. So as I started reading this book, I actually thought of my dad and I thought he might want to read this book. So I recommended this book to him and he put it on his to-read list, but he did say that he noticed there were some negative reviews online about this book. And I decided not to read the negative reviews online. Usually I don't even read reviews of books online. I just tend to form my own opinions. But because my dad had mentioned it when I finished reading this book and I really enjoyed this book, I went to read the negative reviews. And at that time, I feel like I knew why people weren't going to like this book. So when you pick this book up, I feel like you might have the expectation that this book is going to be about how he learned algebra, geometry, and calculus as like a step-by-step guide. Like first he started here and then he tried this problem and then he's working through these types of problems. He found these books helpful. These are things he struggled with. This is how he saw his years of experience connect with what he was learning. So I think a lot of people went in with the expectation that it was going to be more like this. And I feel like with some negative reviews can be attributed to a lack of, or a different expectation of a book than what the book is actually about. And that's true across the board for any book. I feel like about probably half of the review books that I give a lower review to aren't necessarily the fact that it's a poor book, but the fact that my expectations about the book were different than what the book was actually about. Some of that maybe could be, the book could have been promoted differently, or the title was a little misleading in my opinion. However, I feel like about half of the book reviews that are poor in general just are due to expectation. And I feel like that's where a lot of the poor reviews for this book come from, and that is, and I'm not saying everyone thinks this is a poor book. There are plenty of people out there who also enjoy it and gave it a good rating, but for those who did give it a poor rating, or if you're reading this, or if you're listening to this review and you want to read it, I think it's important to go in with correct expectations, because I do agree that the title can be a little misleading. This is more of Alec Wilkinson's, the author's, experience or his thoughts that he had on mathematics or about things that are related to mathematics as he was going through this process of teaching himself this. This isn't a step-by-step on how to learn these topics when you're older or outside of the traditional education system. It's also not a step-by-step, like on each page he's not explaining exactly how he learned it or the problems he went through topic by topic. That information is in there. He does talk about the books he uses, he talks about the books he reads, he talks about some of the problems he's going through or the things he's studying, but it's not like a step-by-step instruction guide, and it's a lot more, I would say, on the philosophical side or just things he thinks about that he encounters in math. I feel like he probably, as an author, leans a little more philosophical, and that comes through in his work. He is someone who doesn't have a strong math background up to this point, so he's not getting really deep into like the math topics, and I think having the expectation of more of a philosophical book on mathematics going into this is going to help you appreciate and enjoy this book better, rather than going into the book thinking that this is going to be a step-by-step guide on how to learn mathematics as someone who's older or outside of the traditional education system. So I feel like expectation is super important. That being said, I actually did think this was going to be a step-by-step on how he learned math himself at this older age, and it turned out to be philosophical, but I didn't mind it. I didn't mind that shift once I appropriately calibrated my expectations. I found it very enjoyable. I would rate this 4 stars and highly recommend, as long as the person going into it has a really good foundation or a really good expectation of what to expect out of the book. So I feel like the poor expectations, if those were mitigated, would lead to much higher reviews from some of the people who maybe gave it a poorer review. Not all of them, but just some of them. So that's just, I feel like, a word about expectation about this book, because once you have the right expectation, I found the book to be really enjoyable. It's broken down into these bite-sized pieces as he goes throughout the year. So they're just like little essays that you can read. You can kind of read it at whatever pace you want because the essays are kind of small, so you can kind of You can read many pages, like 100, 200 pages in one sitting, or you could just read one section if you want to purchase the book and take your time going through it. But having the right expectation is really important, and once you have that, I think that Alec Wilkinson's opinions and philosophical musings are very interesting to read and worthwhile to check out if you enjoy mathematics, or you're just curious about the opinions or philosophy of someone who's learning these topics at an older age. So I do recommend with the appropriate expectations, and I think this was a very enjoyable book to read. I'm glad I read it, and I hope that if you pick this up, you enjoy it and you are able to get something out of this book as well. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts on this book or any comments on this book, please leave them in the comments down below. If you have a book that you'd like to suggest, I'm always taking suggestions. I try to work it into my reading schedule where I can. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.